So earlier today, I was looking at an article from one of my favorite people on Substack, Rachel Botsman. She writes about thinking and creativity, and she wrote about how AI is divorcing us from this idea of craft in terms of working on or developing a craft. She mentioned an art exhibit that showed, I can't remember the guy's name, but his sketches that led to the final product. And it was nice to see his process. And she says the problem with AI is that we just put in a prompt and we have this finished product. So people don't go through the process as much anymore. And yeah, even if you're, a filmmaker or a writer, you can still do certain drafts using AI. But she stressed how important it is to hang on to this idea of craft, as in developing a craft. So not just in the traditional ways we think about it. At least this was my take on it. Like, it's not just about looking at craft as someone who builds furniture, for example, or just a writer, although that's a really great example. And she did talk about that, like how she likes writing a book and not knowing the finished product and being in that messy middle, which is such an important piece of creativity, like being lost in the process, not knowing where it's going, having to wrestle with an issue, having to be bored with what you're working on. And I do agree with her. And as I reflected on it, I realized so much of that is what makes something human, sitting with something, being in that unknown space. And I do feel like that's such a key piece to how we develop as a new human, a new species, that so much of it is about being willing to be in the discomfort of the unknown, the mystery. And I mean, other mystics have said similar things, like for centuries. Like, that's not necessarily a new concept. I just think it's even more important as technology expands and develops. And I like that she cautioned us to use AI as a tool for, repetitive, mundane things, but to still have spaces in our lives where we don't just generate a result from a prompt. I think that's really important, because I know for me, it feels important. And I think that's why I like this idea of doing 111 days of podcasting, just my own thoughts with what I'm sitting with or what's coming up for me, like today. Like, there's something in this process of just finding my voice, developing my voice. And it'll be interesting to see what I sound like by the end of this, or even a year from now. Because beyond the 111 days, I don't think I'm going to continue to do daily audios of whatever I'm processing. But I like the idea of doing it on a regular basis, like once a week at least. There's something nice about it too, knowing that someone out there is listening to it. Like, it's not just an entry in my journal or like a vlog for myself, because it'll be interesting as this develops to see what resonates with people, what they respond to. And I'm curious if there's something in your life that you use as a space to have craft, something you're sitting with, something you work on. Like, even if it's just developing different recipes. Especially, this is November, the holiday seasons are coming, Thanksgiving, Christmas. A lot of people are, playing with their family recipes. So maybe you have a spin on it, or maybe there's one you've been working on for years. Like, I usually make biscotti this time of year for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I've had different versions of my biscotti recipe. I took bits and pieces from others' recipes, and now I kind of have my own that I work with. And I like that process of every year tweaking it, adapting it, seeing what I like better from the year before or what worked a few years ago, and going back to something. I think it's important to give ourselves a space where it doesn't have to be finished and it doesn't have to be perfect. And there's also something nice too about having something that you are going in that direction, like a writer with a book, or if you're working on a painting or a photograph, something creative like that. Or I wonder if maybe that's what it's like for parents. I mean, I don't have children of my own, but maybe that's a way to look at it, like you're parenting as something that's always in process. instead of comparing yourself to how your parents did it or how the other parents in your community parent their kids. Because I really do believe that, most parents intuitively know what their kids need. Like, every kid has their own personality. And it's interesting, too, when you look at human design and from what I hear, I've never actually done this, looked at the chart of a kid and then their parent, but just based on when I've looked at my own chart and my own family dynamics with my siblings, I'm sure it's similar. Like if you can see what lights up your human design chart and your kid's chart and vice versa, like, each kid is going to need something different because their chart's going to be different. Like everybody's astrological chart is different. Everybody's human design chart is different. And I think intuitively, most parents know, which kid needs more stuff that makes them more extroverted and which kid needs stuff that will make them more introverted, And I think the hard part is, from what I've observed anyway, is that a lot of parents second guess themselves about those things. Or, they let other people talk them into, doing what it's quote unquote the right thing. At the end of the day, though, I think most parents know who their kids are and ultimately what's best for their kids. And you're probably doing a great job if you trust yourself. And I remember talking to a coworker years ago, her kid was complaining that, she didn't give them enough space and, they wanted more independence and, they were always hovering and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, part of the process of growing up and, separating yourself from your parents is you're always going to push back about how your parents took care of you. Either you think your parent didn't give you enough freedom or they gave you too much freedom. That's just part of the process of being a teenager. You're going to complain about whatever you're given. That's just part of the deal. So, that's always part of it. But I don't know. Where was I going with all of this? Yeah, just be open to being unfinished and be open to having things that are unfinished and look at where you're becoming maybe too dependent on AI. And it's something I have been working on too. And it's one of the reasons why I took a break from my Substack and my newsletter, because I was using AI to produce a lot of it. And I wanted to get into a space where I felt like I was putting more of my own voice in it and then just using AI for the editing, which has been super helpful. And I will get back to that. And I'm still playing with what that's going to look like. But yeah, I think craft is important. Having a process, working on something, not always just giving a prompt and having a finished product. And I want to continue to use AI for more mundane stuff or simple customer service stuff. That's super helpful. I had an issue with my contact lenses and being able to use the AI and the chatbot with the store was super helpful and probably saved me 30 minutes. But I don't want to use it for all my creative stuff. I think there was an Instagram or social media post a while back that someone said, I want AI to do my errand so I have more time to be creative, not the other way around. And I think that this is just a similar vein of that thought or exploration. Just to give ourselves permission to not have it always be right or perfect. Or it goes back to what I always remind people of, how important it is just to have a hobby, something you do just for fun. That doesn't have to be perfect or right. It's good to have things in our lives that don't have to be on display or perfect or for other people's approval. Yeah, I think that's a big part of the AI prompt thing. So often we jump to that because we know the finished product is going to be acceptable. It's going to get a stamp of approval from people. That's the problem with drafts and rough drafts and working on stuff, and making mistakes. It's so easy to be afraid to be judged harshly. And a lot of times we're our harshest critics. The people around us aren't even that critical of the things we create or produce. At least that's been my experience. I'm usually way harder on my stuff than other people. So AI can reinforce that, unfortunately. So I'm really glad she wrote that article, and I'm really glad I read it and that I've been sitting with it, and I will probably continue to sit with it and go back to it from time to time. And I'll remember to link it in the show notes here, as they say. And yeah, if you have thoughts, let me know.